Hi there. So today I'm going to be stringing a Dunlop Hyperfibre XT135, which is the Yao signature racket. This is still a bit of a favourite racket for a lot of people. This is a model from 3 or 4 years ago, but it's still very, very widely used, and the updated ones are just mainly cosmetic changes with a few structural changes inside, but the string patterns are largely the same. This has been requested from me for a long time. Lots of people have asked me if I can demonstrate the best way of stringing this racket. I don't want to say it's been designed wrong in terms of the string pattern and layout, but it's certainly not one which is particularly stringer friendly. So there are a few things to note. So you've got the notches, which are pretty commonplace within a lot of Dunlop rackets. If you don't string it the right way, you start stringing over the barrier there rather than through the notches, which leaves the strings exposed on the outside. Also, you've got tie-off area here, which is the last cross, which is also a bit of an odd place to have a tie-off. So what I'm going to be doing in a minute is just enlarging the hole above, because it will fit into my stringing pattern a lot easier. Also, naturally, this racket would go with the cross strings from the throat area up to the head. Again, bit of a no-no. We all know, well, say we all know, professional racket stringers will know that on tennis, squash and racquetball, rule of thumb is always to string the crosses from the head to the throat because of the shape of the racket, and also because when you're pulling the most tension at the throat at the end, this is the strongest part of the racket. As opposed to the top, you've got lots of support here, sort of triangle, so it's structurally a lot more sound here. Other advantages, as I've discussed before, if you string the crosses from the throat to the head, all you do is you pull in the throat here, balloon the head, so deform it, and then it messes the sweet spot up. String from the head down, and it pulls things a bit more in this side at the end, which means that you're still keeping the form of the racket as it should be, and also looking after the integrity of it as well, because you've got a short area to pull that last cross. So, you know, you've got the same tension being pulled at this cross as you got up here. So it only stands to reason that you're better off doing it this end, because the racket can take it a bit better where it's got more support. This racket, again, you need to make sure it's mounted the correct way up, with the Dunlop logo the correct way. This will also mean that if you get it right, you should be stringing with the strings going through the notches as opposed to over. So make sure you mount it correctly. There's also some funny little quirks with this racket which you have to do if you want to string it right, which include one double pull in this kind of area here. The reason why you have to do that is unless you want to be really, really fiddly and potentially damage the string or just mess it up anyway, because you've got a shared, excuse me, a shared grommet, you have to do a bit of manoeuvring with a starting clamp and everything else. But again, I'll talk about that going through. Where we discuss the shared grommets, you need to be careful with the little grooves here to make sure that you're not overlapping the strings on the outside as well. So anyway, that's the kind of prep work I'm going to be doing for it. If I just get the racket mounted up, let's make sure it's all mounted up correctly. Just getting over a bit of a cold at the moment, so you have to excuse me if there's a bit of coughing and spluttering. Right, so first of all, string. So I'm going to measure out 5 and a bit arm spans worth of string, and that little bit extra is just because it does require a little bit more because it is a fan pattern, so you've got some extended strings. That's the thing I should have probably mentioned at the start of this. The reason why this is quite a difficult one as well is because it is a fan pattern racket. So a conventional round the world pattern won't necessarily always work. Cool, right, so just measured out my string, and now to measure it against the racket. So on this side, which I'm going to have as my short side as opposed to that side on this racket, again, it's because you have to get everything in the right order. I'm going to measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a little bit. So about a third of the racket length. That's going to cover the short side and the final cross on here. So once I've got the string through, I'm then just going to do a bit of enlarging on that grommet, which I discussed before, because it means that you can then also keep the string in the correct place through the notches towards the end. Right, cool. So let's quickly do that. So I mentioned to you before, so I'm picking up bits of fluff on my hand from inside the grommet. So this here, that is the tie off that's marked on the racket. However, that's the last cross, so it's not really suitable for doing a tie off on that one. So the one above, very, very gently, and I'm holding the racket in place here rather than just pushing, because I want to be very careful with the frame. I'm just very carefully just opening up that grommet a little bit. And when I say carefully, I really do mean carefully. Don't just jam it in there and hope for the best. Get a good bit of width on it to make it bigger than the other grommets. If you find that you can't do it very easily, just use a bit of heat on the grommet with a hairdryer or something, just to soften it up a bit. But if you just do it carefully, you should be absolutely fine doing that. So this one's strung at 26 pounds tension. Again, lots of different ways of starting it. I just like to start it this way. So let's get the first one done. So just going to do a couple on the short side first. Okay, and we're going to skip the second to top main grommet there. So you're going in the third grommet at the head. So that in a minute we can come back down. Again, getting the clamps nice and close to the frame as much as you can. I tend to leave a little bit of room just so I don't crimp it right on the edge. I'm not going to tension this string here. I like to do tension every other string. Sorry, every 2 strings rather than every 3. So move on to the other side now. And again, just skipping that second grommet at the head. What you might find when you're stringing rackets sometimes is you get little bits of fluff or dust in the grommets that pull through with the string. It's a bit like a pipe cleaner getting the string through, because it actually clears the grommets a little bit sometimes. I mean, if you can blow some of that dust out and get rid of it before you start stringing, great, but sometimes it's just the little bits that pull through. As we mentioned, this is fan pattern, so it's important to get the strings going the right way. So when I come down through that second hole in the head, I'm making sure this string, the second on the second one, that it sits on top of the first string that I've pulled. And on the other side, I'll do the opposite. On the other side, I will make sure that it goes underneath. And that again is all because you need to get the hard weave right at the end, which is really important, because otherwise you'll have a mixture of a hard weave and a soft weave on that final cross. And it is the little things that make a difference. Something to be careful of with the teeth. With a fan pattern, quite often the string will move across and get jammed in the teeth. So just be super careful just to look after that string, especially with a string like Hyperfibre. I'm going to just quickly check that the string on the outside, because it's shared grommets, that it sits flush on the outside and that there's no crossover. So I'm just going to poke my head around. Yep, that's all good. Then I'm going to bring this string through, down through the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, through the 5th, and to the 3rd from bottom grommet of the throat. And just save me a bit of time afterwards. Just going to pop that loose bit of string in one of the holes there. And then on this side, I'm going to make sure the string is underneath that one. So the opposite to on the other side. And again, that is just to make sure the fan pattern's correct. Right. Again, paying careful attention at the throat to make sure that nothing's crossed over. Again, all looks good, so let's pull. If you do, for any reason, find when you're stringing this racket or any other fan pattern that the strings are crossed on the outside or crossed on the inside of the frame, just go back to the previous one, clamp it off, and go again. People are paying you money for this. They want to see a good job, and chances are, if it is crossed over, the performance is going to suffer as well. So don't pass off bad work, especially if you're charging money for it. So we're going to do on this side. So at the moment we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strings. We're going to skip the 6, 7, 8, 9 and 9th holes. So the next 1, 2, 3, 4 grommets we're going to skip, and we go through 10. I think it's 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, go through the 10th grommet, and that's going to be the the outside main. And again, because it's a fan pattern, it's just the way we have to do it. So I'm going to use a starting clamp here. That will be replaced with one of the main clamps in a bit, which I'll talk you through when we do it. So coming back down here, and remembering on the other side that we're going over the top of the string as opposed to underneath it like on the other side. Got a little bit close on that clamp there, so it's fine. So I'm just going to pull it through carefully because it is a little bit close. I don't want to burn that string. So again, we're going to the 10th grommet, and you'll see which one it is because it's the largest one, because it's a shared grommet on there. Okay, there we go. Get rid of a bit more fluff. So I decided to have a little bit of a coughing fit after I did the mains, so I thought I'd just start again quickly on the cross strings. So we've done the mains, which is all good. I've clamped off here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the second cross down on the long side of the racket. So you're going to skip the first cross grommet, skip the next grommet, which is the main grommet for the main string, for the second to the last main, and go to the third grommet down, which is the second cross. Because I'm doing a hard weave at the bottom, I've worked it out that going underneath that string, underneath the first one you come to, is going to allow me to finish on a hard weave. So we'll go to the corresponding next grommet, which is the second grommet down on that side. Pull tension. Again, nice and close to the frame there. Through here. Doing now, I'm just actually checking to make sure that I'm not going to get a crossover with the strings on the other side. So normally what I would do is string one ahead, but can't string one ahead on this one because I've got the starting clamp blocking the way. So what I'm going to do is I don't need the top starting clamp at the moment. Sorry, the top base clamp at the moment. So because I've already clamped off with that one. So I'm going to bring it down and remove the starting clamp and replace there, which means I can then get through to these grommets. Not ideal, but I'm going to have to use the double pull method for the next 2 strings, but I'll be adding some tension on to make up for it and wiggling it about a bit just to make sure that we're not going to be losing any tension on it. So you add a little bit just to ensure, but the reason why we have to do it this way is because otherwise it gets really, really messy. You start scuffing the strings up because you're going through a shared grommet up here. So that's a shared grommet. For the first of the, for these two as well, you're going to be going for this one here, you're going to be going underneath the outside main and the third outside main, because the second outside main will then push it back up. So from now on, any of the cross strings that you do, from now on, for the first 2 main strings that you get to, you're going to have under or over on both of them, and then revert to normal pattern. So I'm just going to add 15% of tension here. And what I'm going to do, just to make sure, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I'll do that on any of I've got 3 of these rackets to do, so I'll do that on all of them just to keep that consistency. And what it does is it pulls it through. Yes, you've double pulled it, but you've added a little bit of extra tension on top just to safeguard, and you've also just manipulated it a little bit. So now I need to use this clamp again. So I'm just going to get my starting clamp and clamp off that string, because I've now got easy access again. I know this is a little bit fiddly, but the end results are very, very good, and it means that you can string cross down and remain within all of the notches without any particular issues. Again, because it is all a little bit tight around here, I'm not going to string one ahead for a little bit. Just wait till I've got down a few. Again, just taking a bit of extra care just to keep the cross strings nice and straight as you go through. Make sure no crosses over on the outside, that's good. And as I said at the beginning of the video, you know if this racket's been done right, if it looks right generally. If you see mistakes with strings crossed over and crossing of the fan at the end and stuff, it just doesn't look good. You know, one mistake, likelihood is if there's one mistake on the racket, there's probably going to be a few more. So attention to detail is a big thing if somebody's paid that money for it. So again, just going underneath these 2 here on both of them, and then normal pattern there, then over the last 2. When you get up close and personal to it, it will make complete and utter sense, because you are going to be utilising that space in between and filling up that gap, going under or over the remaining strings. And what I'm doing here is I'm staying nicely between the lines in the grooves on the outside as well. You might notice I'm sliding the strings through here as opposed to doing a normal kind of finger weave that I normally would do. Because it's on a fan pattern, it's a lot easier to slide them through sideways, kind of slip and slide method, rather than doing a finger weave, for the pure and simple fact that it's not completely symmetrical. So trying to do it quickly, smoothly and well with little friction is difficult, because you've got tighter space that only gets narrower the further you go down. So just find a way that works best for you. And again, just keep, this is a racket where you need to really concentrate on what you're doing to make sure that you don't miss any loops. So again, just ensuring that you're going under or over the first 2 strings. I actually am using the same string pattern as I use, same stringing method rather, as I use when I'm doing Yao's rackets. So the owner of the signature racket, this one, Yao, I do a bit of stringing for him when he's around, when he's back in the southwest, and if he's got a tournament to go to and he's got time to come and see me. For anybody who doesn't know Yao, he is one of the nicest guys, like super cool guy, really good guy. Very clever guy as well. Recently graduated from Bristol University, West of England, Bristol UWE. On the tour now full time, but yeah, he's a super player, super guy. I think you've probably got friends with every single one of the PSA players. If you ever see him, say hello to him. Feel free to mention me to him. I'm not saying he's going to buy you a drink or a coffee, but he'll probably have a good chat. He's actually one of the few people who I know that when he's away on tour, if there's a stringing machine around and he needs to string a racket, he will actually have a good go at doing it himself as well. I've spoken to him a few times early hours of the morning where he's been in the States or somewhere else, and he's just called me up to talk about the stringing pattern, and he'd make a decent stringer. I think he gets it. He's worked out how to do a few tricky patterns like this one on his racket. Maybe not exactly the same as this, but it's good. I know he's got some very good friends in Bristol. So as you can see, we're just kind of motoring through this a little bit more now because it's getting a bit more standard. We're not having to switch any of the starting clamps or anything through. Sorry, just knocking the camera there with my head. And it does get a lot more tight when you get towards the end. For any of the eagle-eyed viewers who haven't seen my last couple of videos where I've had my new Hyperfibre X-Cord stringing machine on display, this is it. This is my new X-Cord stringing machine, which is an absolutely brilliant piece of kit. Really enjoy stringing on this machine. Super smooth. I'm starting to get a bit more used to it now. Got self-release or gravity release clamps rather, electronically adjustable height. The rails, so these bits here, are probably the smoothest in the industry. I think most people will recognise that. So we're now coming to the stage where I need to clamp it near the middle. The reason being is because I'm now going to come up on the second to last cross string, main string here. So going through here, so I need to create that space. So this string should sit on top of this one to create the perfect fan pattern. And I'm going to go over that gap, then under the next one, over. So this is why it's important to go under or over two when you're doing the cross patterns down here, so that you're able to have the correct pattern coming back up again. So again, just making sure everything all lines up okay, and just wiggle it about a bit. Leave it in for a little bit longer on this one. Again, reason being because there's a bit more resistance on here, so give it a bit of a wiggle. Make sure it's all good. It's all starting to come together. So we're now going to do this side. Now you can have a starting clamp on here, so get your hand near it and just be very careful taking it off because you don't want to damage the string. One thing I probably should mention as well, so when I talked about double pulling a couple of the strings up here before, one thing which I should really mention with that is if you've got a crank machine or a drop weight machine, you'll most likely need to maybe pull it 3 or 4 times. So pull it, clamp, pull it, clamp, pull it, clamp, pull it, clamp. Because unlike having a constant pull electronic machine, you haven't got that constant gravity pulling through it, or the electric motor pulling it. So you need to just pull it, clamp, pull it, clamp, pull it, clamp, and don't skip that part if you've got a crank machine, because you will notice it afterwards. So I'm now going down the last main on this side. Again, just going to make sure that's all going to sit correctly, which it is, which is good. I mean, the one thing which I would say if I was working directly with Dunlop, I have said it to him before actually, is I get rid of the notches on the outside of the racket, the slots where the strings fit into, because the amount of rackets I see coming to me where the string has got it the wrong way around and the strings are pointing on the outside, it's not just an aesthetic thing for me, it's just not. It's one extra thing for a stringer to have to worry about, and if you don't do lots of rackets, I mean, unfortunately, fortunately for me, I do quite a lot of rackets, including this one, so I know what to look out for. Cool. Right, just gonna pull hitch on this, and because it's at the top, and I need these clamps, I'm just going to use that starting clamp again. Cool. Right, so I've been very frugal in that last piece of string there doesn't actually reach my puller. So you can use a spare starting clamp with a bridge. So it's a piece of synthetic gut string which isn't too elastic anymore. I'm going to use that, clamp that on there. So you've got the eyes, so you pass the string through the eyes. I'm going to use that as a bridge. Put it in the machine, put it in the tension head there, and voila! It means I can extend that area without having to start the racket again. So useful little tip if anybody doesn't know about that, if you're very tight on your string. So I'm now going through that hole which I've widened a little bit. And what this enables me to do, it still stays within the slots on the outside of the frame. So here's another one of the rackets which I've just strung. So it's not, again, it's not exactly ideal, but you see all the slots, they all match up correctly. We've got nothing crossed over here either. And that is the aim. Again, just finishing this off with a parnell knot. Oops. Haven't got quite as much string to play with on this one. I'll just use my give it a bit of a tug, not too hard. Just don't want to damage the string. Hold on to the starting clamp and the knot as you're releasing the base clamp as well, just so the knot at the end is correct. And then we're going to come up and we're going to clamp the last one. So we've already tensioned this one, so I'm just going to clamp it in, get the last bit of string, and this one you can go through the regular hole, and it's the right one to go through because it's the nearest one to where the last cross has gone through. So remember, this is the first cross at the top, but the last cross that we're actually going to tie off. And as with the other one, hold on to it whilst you're doing it. Give it a bit of a snip. Again, short tail on there. Let's not get too involved with having these ridiculously long tails. And just going to straighten the strings. Again, you probably have seen me before with Technofibre strings. You want to get rid of the notches or stop them from notching out of position as soon as you can, because if you leave these strings in any period of time, then come back to the racket and try and straighten the strings later, you'll just end up with loads of notches everywhere and the strings won't be straight. Whereas if you get them straight to start with, chances are they'll stay straight for the whole time you're playing with it. Then that's one thing that Technofibre is really good with, is having strings which, once you've strung the racket properly, they'll stay in place. Even if you've mishit the ball, they very rarely move out of place. They snap back very quickly, which is a good sign of longevity within an elastic string. So you might see the clamps move there. The rails are just so slidey. Again, you've got to be quite careful with this. I mean, it's a blunt end on there, but I always go in at a slightly diagonal angle so it skips them. And then at the end, just making sure that any strings, especially the cross strings, which just get knocked out of place a bit when you're straightening the mains, just making sure that they're all back and in order. So we have it. So we have all of the slots perfectly in place. Nothing over the top, all of it's correct, and we have a good racket that's hopefully going to win a few matches.